So, you've heard the story a million times, right? Artificial intelligence is inspired by the human brain. And it's a really powerful idea. It's the concept that's driven some of the most mind-blowing tech we've seen in our lifetimes.
At the very heart of all this are what we call artificial neural networks, or ANNs. These are basically computer models trying their best to copy the brain's massive, tangled web of neurons. And let's be clear, this approach has been a wild success. It's given us AI that can see, that can listen, and can even beat us at our most complicated games.
But this is where we have to pause and ask a really important question. We use the word inspired all the time, but does AI actually learn the way a brain does? Well, it turns out the answer is not really. And that uncovers this deep, fascinating paradox at the very center of modern AI.
Here's the big secret. The main algorithm that trains pretty much all the AI we use today, it's a process called backpropagation. It's something that neuroscientists are almost all in agreement on. Our brains just don't work that way. It's incredibly powerful for sure, but from a biological standpoint, it's got some serious problems. Let's dig into what they are.
So, to really get why, we have to talk about what makes a learning method biologically plausible. Basically, for an algorithm to be truly brain-like, it has to follow a few rules of nature. And backpropagation, for all its power, kind of stumbles right out of the gate on a few of the big ones.
There are three big hurdles here. First, the wiring between neurons can't be perfectly symmetrical, like a two-way street. Second, learning signals have to be local, no micromanaging from the top. And third, learning needs to happen all the time, continuously, not in a weird start-stop process. As you're about to see, backpropagation has a tough time with all three.
Okay, so the first problem is this thing called weight symmetry. Imagine a highway. In backpropagation, the road used to send information forward has to be a perfect mirror image of the road used to send corrections backward. But real brain synapses, they're not like that at all. They're more like a chaotic city grid full of one-way streets and weird intersections.
The second issue is what we call a global error signal. In backpropagation, the entire network makes a guess, and then one single, you messed up, signal gets sent from the very end, all the way back down the line. Think about it. That's like the CEO of a huge company having to personally run down to the mailroom to tell one employee they used the wrong kind of stamp. The brain is way more efficient. It has local managers. Neurons get feedback from their immediate neighbors.
And number three is the two-phase problem. Backpropagation does this weird two-step dance. First, there's a forward pass where it makes a prediction. Then, it stops everything for a backward pass where it learns from the mistake. Think, then learn. Think, then learn. Our brains don't work like that. We're learning, processing, and acting all at once, all the time. Biology doesn't hit pause to update itself.
So researchers have known about these issues for a long, long time. And it's kicked off this decades-long quest to find something better, an algorithm that can learn just as well, but does it in a way that actually makes sense biologically.
And believe me, people have come up with a whole bunch of really clever and fascinating algorithms trying to crack this code. But as we're about to see, every single attempt so far has been a near miss in this search for truly brain-like AI. Take a look at feedback alignment. Super clever approach. It actually solves that first problem, the weight symmetry thing, by using random paths for the error signals. That's a huge win. But it's still stuck with that micromanaging CEO and the clunky two-phase learning process. So, one problem solved, two to go. Then you've got something like local losses. This one is brilliant because it tackles the second problem, the global error thing. It gives each layer its own little goal, but it still needs those perfectly mirrored connections, and it still operates in two separate steps. It's like a game of whack-a-mole. You solve one problem, and another pops up. This scorecard here really sums up the whole struggle perfectly. You can see all of these different ideas, and how they check one box, maybe two. What's really fascinating is that some much older ideas, like Hebbian learning, neurons that fire together, wire together, they actually tick all three boxes. The catch? They've just never been powerful enough for the really complex stuff. So that's the holy grail, finding an algorithm that checks all three boxes and can perform at an elite level.
For a long time, it really seemed like you had to make a choice. You could have performance, or you could have biological plausibility. You couldn't get both. But then, a breakthrough came, and the answer wasn't found in some new math trick, but by looking way, way closer at the biology of one very, very special type of neuron.
Say hello to the pyramidal neuron. This cell is an absolute superstar.
These things make up something like 70 to 85% of the neurons in our cerebral cortex, the part of the brain doing all the heavy lifting. And by modeling the incredibly complex structure of this one cell, researchers created a totally new way for an AI to learn.
It's called dendritic localized learning, or DLL, and the core idea is so elegant. Instead of treating an artificial neuron as a simple dot that just adds things up, DLL models it with 3 distinct parts, just like the real thing. This lets it handle incoming information and feedback signals in different parts of the same cell at the same time.
And this is the genius of it. This new structure just solves all 3 problems at once. It uses separate pathways for information, so boom, you get your asymmetry. It computes the error signal right there, locally, inside the neuron, so goodbye micromanaging CEO. And because it can do everything in different compartments, it can learn and process at the same time. Continuous learning, check. It gets a perfect score. So, it's a beautiful theory. It checks every single box. It's truly brain-like. But that brings us to the million-dollar question, right? The only one that really matters in the end. Can it actually hang with the undisputed heavyweight champion, backpropagation? And the answer, as you can see right here on this chart, is a resounding yes. The results are frankly stunning. On standard, tough benchmark tasks, DLL, that's the blue line, achieves performance that is right there with standard backpropagation. This is the moment. This is the breakthrough. It's the first algorithm to finally close the gap between being brain-like and being high performance. So this is so much more than just a cool academic paper. A breakthrough like this has really profound implications for the entire future of AI. It might just be pointing us toward a whole new era of how we build these things. So why does this matter so much? Well, for one, building AI this way, with local rules, could lead to computer chips that are way more energy efficient, neuromorphic hardware that works like a brain. It also gives neuroscientists a brand new model to understand how we learn. And maybe the biggest deal of all, it opens the door to AIs that can learn continuously, on the fly, just like us. That's a huge step toward a more flexible, general kind of intelligence. You know, the statistician George Box famously said, "All the models are wrong, but some are useful." And that just hits the nail on the head here. DLL isn't a perfect one-to-one replica of the brain, of course not. But by being a more useful model, a more accurate model, it helps us both build smarter machines and understand the incredible intelligence we have right inside our own heads. And that leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. For decades, AI has been built to look a little bit like a brain, but it's always learned in this fundamentally alien way. Now, we're finally starting to bridge that gap. So the question we have to leave on is this. If we finally teach an AI to learn like a brain, will it eventually start to think like one?